Hey everybody, welcome to the Bay Area Content Marketing Meetup. My name is Dennis Shao. I'm the organizer of the meetup. Today we're going to talk about how to think about being more inclusive to trans and non-binary people. With us is Ruth Carter. Ruth is going to share suggestions that anyone can apply to their life or their business to be more inclusive in your thoughts and behaviors, and the upsides that come with being an open ally to this community. All questions will be welcome. As long as you're coming from a place of curiosity and respect, you won't offend them if you happen to say something wrong. Ruth, thanks for joining us today, and take it away.
Thanks, Dennis. Thank you so much for having me to talk with your group and to be able to talk about this topic, which is something that is very near and dear to my heart. And when Dennis says that all questions are welcome, I really do mean it. This is a place where I don't want you to worry about saying something wrong and inadvertently offending me. If you truly have a question and you want to know an answer, just throw it in the chat or jump in and say it. I'm open to any and all questions. You will not offend me if you happen to use, the wrong word. So we start with that. And I really want today to be kind of a storytelling Q&A type of an approach. I don't think anyone needed death by PowerPoint about non-binary people and transgender people. So I just kind of went crazy on my notebook today with, I do have some stats, but mostly just talking about my experience being a non-binary person and what it's been like to interact with companies both on an ongoing basis where like I've been their customer for 12 years and also encountering somebody or an organization for the first time. So just to make sure that we're all on the same page from the beginning, let me just tackle a little bit about the vocabulary around this topic. So the word transgender is a descriptor for anybody who is not the gender that they were assigned at birth. So most of us were assigned female or assigned male at birth. You may see the abbreviation AFAB or AMAB, assigned female at birth, assigned male at birth. And so, but it's a really big umbrella term, which includes people who are, trans male, trans female, what we used to call male to female transgender, male to female transgender. You can tell I'm very visual with how I use my hands. We now use trans man, trans woman, where it's trans and then the gender that they are now, or their true gender. So there's that, but that umbrella also includes things like demi boy, demi girl, gender fluid, and there are all these words under the umbrella. And I will tell you, I don't know what they all mean. So if you don't either, that's okay. If you encounter somebody who says, or if I encounter someone who says, oh, I'm gender fluid, I will ask, okay, what does that mean for you? So that I can understand their experience, because I think maybe with some of these words, we will get to a point where we have generally accepted definitions, but we're not there yet. And so, so I've encountered people and I'll either say, does this mean this? Or I'll ask, what does that mean for you? And then non-binary also falls under the transgender umbrella because I would say probably everybody here, when we were born, we didn't have the option to be non-binary on our birth certificates. There are states now that will issue a non-binary birth certificate for a brand newly born baby. But non-binary generally falls under transgender because we're not the gender that was first put on our birth certificate. So that's why non-binary tends to fall under that umbrella. You will run into non-binary people who will say, I'm not trans, I'm non-binary. It's like semantics, you feel like you need like a flow chart or something. It's okay. I identify as both transgender and non-binary. Non-binary people are people who are outside the male-female gender binary. We are not male or female. And the abbreviation for non-binary is X. So for those of us who have had our documents updated, our birth certificates and or driver's licenses, we are legally acknowledged X-men. Yes, I know it's kind of weird to say I'm non-binary and an X-man, but whatever. I like superheroes. Go with it. So that's kind of, oh, and then the honorific for non-binary is mix, MX. So if you ever see that, that's how you pronounce it. That's what it means. And then if you happen to be the gender that you were assigned at birth, you are cisgender. And the Latin terms, cis and trans, they are Latin. They've been around for forever. I first learned about cis and trans when I took organic chemistry, because cis means same, trans means opposite, and I learned about it in the configuration of molecules of, and so I'm not going to get into a science lesson here, but that's where I first learned about those terms. But a lot of people don't know that they are Latin prefixes. So you'll hear about some people will be like, don't call me cis. I'm not cis. I don't like that word. It's like, it's Latin. Like, you're just learning a new, you're expanding your vocabulary. We didn't invent a new word that you're not happy about. How would these terms mix or not with sexuality? Good question. Because there are people who say that they are agender, meaning they have no gender. For me, I experience being non-binary as having aspects of male and female and neither, all simultaneously. So I have no box to fit in. Sexuality is completely different. We all fall under the LGBTQ rainbow, banner, but that includes gender minorities and sexual orientation minorities. So you can be transgender and a heterosexual. So if you're a trans man and you like women, you're heterosexual. You could be homosexual, pansexual, panromantic. We're getting into the vocabulary is getting broad. Like I have a friend whose kid is heterosexual but panromantic. Pan means all. So for me, I am pansexual, meaning that I'm potentially attracted to any gender, because when I was younger, I said I was bisexual because like men and women, like, either one is fine. It's your plumbing, your genitals are not the deciding factor as to whether or not I find you attractive. But then when I learned about other genders and I realized I was non-binary, I was like, it doesn't make sense to say that I'm non-binary, but then I'm only attracted to two genders, when I'm like, no, they're all good. So pansexual. So yeah, sometimes you find somebody is both a gender minority and a sexual orientation minority, but not always. So, but we all fall under the rainbow flag, and then underneath it, we have subgroups. If you look at like the number of flags we have now, it's incredible. We have a flag for freaking everything in the LGBTQ world. It's adorable. So sip a LaCroix. Julie, I think your picture's really cute, but do you mind muting yourself? Because I hear you being a human over there and it distracts me. Okay, so okay, and we're back. Do I sometimes say plus after LGBTQ? It doesn't flow off my tongue naturally, so I don't automatically do it. It's LGBTQ plus, meaning that it's like, it's even broader than that acronym. But if we did all the acronyms, we would be doing the entire freaking alphabet. So I don't, but that's why it's there. For a while, the first time I saw it, I was like, does that mean like HIV positive? And they're like, no, it means plus, as in like, it's more than just this. It's like, oh, okay, fine. So it's just to say that there's more under the banner than just those 5 letters. Including like people who are intersex. Oh, let's clarify that one. Intersex people are what we used to call hermaphrodites. We don't use that word anymore. These are people who have either their external genitalia doesn't match their chromosomes, or they're like XXY, or like, you know, XXXY. They have like, you know, like those weird extra chromosomes. Or like they're internal, like they're externally, they have a penis, but internally they have a uterus. So it's a wide way, you know, broad way of being. You know, it's hard to just say like one, like a person is, you know, if someone says they're intersex, that doesn't automatically tell you what their chromosomes are or what their genitalia or internal anatomy is. But they also exist, and they are not non-binary. At least I don't know. I've never known anyone who is both intersex and non-binary. So, all right. I once read an article that said you should not ask people to share their pronouns, say in a meeting, that you should not insist that everyone share their pronouns because you might out someone who is not ready to share their pronouns. Oh God, how should we think about this in terms of wanting to be respectful? You know, I've never heard that. I've heard, and this is also my preference, is don't ask people for their preferred pronouns, because that indicates that there is a preference, therefore a choice. It's like, you know, do you prefer vanilla or chocolate? You know, that's a preference. I don't prefer my gender. I am my gender. So it's just, what are your pronouns? I had a friend who was a judge, and she would ask people to identify themselves both name and pronoun for the record. And I'm like, if nothing else, it's so that that people use the right name, you know, terms. So I would think if someone knows themselves, like they, you know, let's say they're trans and they know, you know, they were assigned female at birth, but they know they're male. That's a decision for them to say, you know, I want to be addressed using these pronouns. And if they're not ready to be out about that, that's a personal choice. So I think it's fine to ask for name and pronouns, because you can't tell by looking at somebody what their gender is or what pronouns they use. Trust me, I am an estrogen-based life form with an old lady name. I have only known of one male named Ruth, ever. So I know, and my voice never dropped. I have boobs for now. Thinking about I'm hoping to get top surgery later on this year. So I know the default is people assume that I'm female, but I'm not. And so to acknowledge that you're not, or that people aren't obvious, you know, their pronouns aren't obvious, is a way of being accepting. And since you brought up the topic, I think it's great when people who are cisgender put their pronouns on, you know, their Zoom, on their email, take advantage of social media platforms that let you have, you know, you can add that in. I know LinkedIn has that. And so people who are just meeting you for the first time can like set their default for you of, you know, this is Jennifer, she, you know, does, you know, this, you know, this is Ruth, they, you know, they are at the meeting, you know, whatever. And it's also an acknowledgement that not everybody's pronouns are obvious. And it's an acknowledgement of there are more than two genders out there, and that by doing it yourself, you are showing that you want to be respectful of other people's. So I think that's great. So I'm definitely a fan of that. I know not everybody is. I know some people find it a turnoff. And it, you know, and there are people who like tweet out like, oh, you know, like, you know, I don't like people who use pronouns. It's like, okay, that's just English. So if you're offended by pronouns, like, you have some issues. So, or, you know, I don't know, you may want to move to a different country. So yeah. All right. Does branding differ among LGBT groups? Are there differences to appeal to someone transgender versus gay, lesbian appearing? Are there marketing trends still early and forming? Yeah, I think there is, because there is, there's a difference between, showing to women versus showing people who are gender nonconforming, let's say, or, using like images of people where when you first look at them, you can't necessarily tell, is that a boy? Is that a girl? I mean, you put a kid in, you stick like a 4-year-old in, with, probably any length hair in a pair of, blue jean overalls and a white t-shirt, is that a boy? Is that a girl? Boys and girls, children are just rectangles, until, puberty kicks in. So, for one, like, who cares? People might assume if there's a bow, it's a girl, or if the kid is playing with Legos, it's a boy, which should be wrong because Legos are for everyone. So, things like that, like you need context to, figure it, to just think like, is this a boy? Is this a girl? It's like, it's a person, let the kid play with whatever they want. Let them wear whatever they want. If your kid wants to wear a dress, fine. Your kid wants to wear the princess dress because they think it's pretty and it's fun to twirl in. Cool. I think everybody should have the experience of spinning in a twirly dress because it's fun. My closet is so kind of wackadoo because I do aspire to be a minimalist, but I have, women's clothing, men's clothing, professional attire from the women's section, professional attire from the men's section, skirt suits, pantsuits, and ball gowns. So, because I'm also a singer and, ball gowns are awesome. So yeah, so in branding, you really can't do, you can't just say, one way, or you can't just say, okay, we're going to show inclusivity of all these groups by having a lesbian couple. It's like, no, you're going to show that you celebrate. I would just kind of factor it in with everything else that you're doing with showing diversity, where you want to show different ethnicities, different skin tones, different hair colors, big people, small people, people with disabilities. You just kind of factor it in with, men, women, gender nonconforming, straight looking couples, gay looking couples. We don't know what you are, couples. As long as you're consenting adults, we don't care. Things like that. So, and depending on your company's culture determines what's the right thing to put in your branding. But, when you appeal to the LGBTQ community, you're not just appealing to that audience, but you're also appealing to the people who care about them. So, let me bring up some of my fun little stats. 76% of Americans support anti-discrimination laws that will protect LGBTQ people, because we're not protected. In Arizona, I can still be fired for, being, I can't be fired because of my gender, but I can be fired because of my sexual orientation. We're trying to pass a law about that right now, but we still have those issues. But there was did you guys hear about the bakery in Texas? I know Dennis has, because he came to my talk at Content Marketing World, but there was a bakery in East Nowhere, Texas, that put on their Instagram a picture of heart-shaped cookies with rainbow stripes on it, and said something like "Happy Pride," sending love to our LGBTQ patrons, or something innocuous like that. And they got so much hate in response, and like people were unfriending them, sending them nasty messages, and they were very open online about it, saying like, we have never experienced anything like this. Everyone's welcome. And this really was East Nowhere, Texas bakery. And the next day, the line of people who wanted to buy from them was out the door and like down the block. And even when they bought everything, they sold out. And even after they sold out, people were like, can I just give you money? People online were like, can I place an online order? And when they were like, sorry, like, we're 3 people in a bakery, like we don't have that they said, can I place an order to go to like a local nursing home then? They do now do online orders, but, and like their social media following like went from like, what you would expect for a tiny 3-person bakery in East Nowhere, Texas, to thousands. Internationally, people were like, I want to support this bakery, because behind every non-binary, transgender, gay person is their friends, their straight friends, their siblings, their mothers, the people who support them. And when they see that there are companies that are saying, we support you, they're like, I want to give my money to you. I don't want to just buy any cookies. I want to buy cookies from that bakery in Texas. When I was driving back from Cleveland, I was checking my Google map, like, can I make it work that I can swing a trip down to visit this bakery in East Nowhere, Texas? I don't like Texas. I purposely flipped off Texas while I was in Texas and took a picture of it. But I wanted to go to this bakery. It didn't make sense with my trip. But it's not just this small group, because when I first told one of my marketing friends, I was like, non-binaries are kind of we're a growing population, just adults. We're not talking your kids. I know, and because they're figuring out sooner that non-binary is a thing, and that is what they are. I didn't know non-binary people existed until I was in my 30s. But the second I heard about it, so many things clicked into place. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is why I didn't understand the girls in my class in 4th grade. I thought they were aliens. It's because they were, compared to me. Only they weren't the weird ones, I was. And I was like, oh, now I get it. I'm not a girl. So just adults. 1.2 million adults in the US are non-binary. And my friend was like, that's really not that many. I was like, okay, it sounds like a lot, but I guess compared to 300 million US population, but if 76% of the population supports us, I don't do math in public, but you're smart enough, you can figure that out. So by showing support, yes, you may lose fans. You may be like, people will be like, oh, you're doing that pronoun thing, like hippy dippy woo woo thing, like I'm out. But that's only 24% of the population. So, are you willing to give up 24 to get, up to 24 to get 76? Again, math, public, me, no. All right, what else are people asking about? For the term transgender, is there a more specific term to indicate that someone had gender affirming surgery? No, you cannot tell, and it is inappropriate to ask anybody, because I don't ask what's going on in your pants. It's inappropriate to ask anybody else, like, so what kind of junk are you working with? And if you're like next to them, like in the at the urinals in the bathroom, like apparently that there's like a code about proper behavior in that situation. I don't use a urinal, so I wouldn't know. However, for people who do want to stand at a urinal who don't have a penis, there are devices called STPs, stand to pee. And I actually do have one. It was a gift, kind of a gag gift given to me by my dad. He got it for me because it was for hiking. So so you don't like pee on yourself when you have to use the bathroom in public when you're out in the nowhere. But if I wanted to pee at a urinal, I could. I don't trust myself, but to not accidentally pee on myself. But they do exist. So, but if someone was like getting that close that they were looking at like what I'm doing, that would be creepy. Anyway, so yeah, no, there is no way to tell. And there are things like chest binders for those of us who have breasts, who don't want to show that off to the world. It's like a sports bra on steroids that mash everything in. And then for bottom, for the genital area, if you have a penis, you can tuck it like the drag queens do. There are underwear that have like a stuffed pouch in the front, so it gives the impression that you have something there that you don't. You can use just a rolled up ball of socks. There are other things. I know there are oh, I was in a car accident a year ago, and it makes it hard to pull up words off the top of my head. There is, I'll think of it in 5 minutes. There are basically a fake penis. And I think one of them's called like Mr. Willie or something like that, but they're soft, they're kind of floppy, and you put it in your underwear so it looks like you have a penis. And trans men, trans boys use them. And so they actually do have them. And there's like been like, you know, embarrassing stories of like high school kids being out in the ocean and like, you know, it got out of their bathing suit and like started floating away, and they had to go after it. And and then you know, for, you know, people who want to look like they have more breasts than they have naturally, you can, you know, padded bra. For people who have had like double mastectomies, they have, you know, prosthetics that I'm sure trans women can also use. So yeah, it's really hard to tell. You know, you can't tell if someone's had surgery or not, and there's no way to know unless they voluntarily tell you about it. But since you brought up the issue of binders, let me tell you how much fun it is for me to go through airport security. Because TSA has a policy that if you set off the spinny go round scanner, you will be patted down by somebody of the same gender. And that's why after you go through the scanner, there is what looks like a man and a woman. Well, when I set off the scanner, well, actually, but first, before you step in, they actually push a button that indicates whether they think you're a man or a woman. And then if you set it off, usually what happens to me is the woman will reach for me and I go, oh, no, I'm not a woman. And then the man will reach for me and I say, oh, no, I'm not a man either. And then they look at each other as if to be like, okay, what do we do here? And sometimes they'll ask, okay, who would you like us, you know, who would you like to pat you down? Sometimes they've called a supervisor. One time the TSA agent said, you have to pick one, to which I responded with, no, I don't. And when I fly, I do wear my binder to go through security. And then I take it off because that thing is tight as crap and I will tend to overheat within 4 hours. But getting through security, I'm like, I am non-binary. I try to look as gender neutral as possible. It's difficult. It's easier when it's winter, when I can be like in like my oversized hoodie or something like that. You know, I wear guy jeans and black socks and like nothing that screams, you know, female. Nothing wrong with being a female. I'm just not one of you. Because I do have this very, you know, God-given feminine face, or genetics given them, you know what I mean? I have this face. It has not been impacted by testosterone. If I want to have a beautiful chiseled jaw, I need contour makeup. Yeah, so going through TSA is always an adventure. And that's just, you know, one of the times that I run into situations where the assumption is you are one or the other, and they will make an assumption about you and proceed accordingly. So yeah, and that is something I wish more companies would do, is like especially if you have an ongoing relationship with a person, like, you know, you're an insurance company or something like that, and put it on like the first screen that your representative is looking at, where you can put in a note or whatever to be like, this person is non-binary, you know, don't use sir or ma'am. There is no gender neutral variation of sir and ma'am. And it makes me cringe every time I hear someone refer to me as ma'am, whether it's in person or on the phone. Especially, I was dealing with my insurance company recently to get a window chip repaired in my car, and the person on the phone was calling me ma'am, and I was just like, okay, I was just waiting, okay, let me give you my, you know, identity, idea, the information need to bring up my account. I know I've told you multiple times that I'm non-binary, hoping that that person would shift. When they saw the screen, they'd be like, oh, non-binary customer, don't say ma'am anymore. No, the whole call, ma'am, 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 ma'am. It's like, oh, I know you're trying to be being polite, but oh my God, I don't like you. And sometimes I correct people and sometimes I don't. It's a, case by case basis. But especially when I have an ongoing relationship with people and I've told them before, I am non-binary, please don't use ma'am, Ms., whatever. They don't. And there was one time I was even at a hotel and I went up to the front desk to say, because I'm in like their, club, like, when I'm, checking in and you bring me up, is there anything on your screen that tells you, or a place where you can put that I'm non-binary so that future people won't call me Miss Carter? And they're like, no, like we don't have that option. And I don't know if you all know this. Do you guys know that the US is going to start issuing non-binary passports this year? Like this was like huge, like headline news in my world. Cisgender people, not so much. So there was an intersex person who sued the government and won. Actually, the government just admitted defeat when Biden came into office. They didn't admit defeat, but whatever. They have already issued one non-binary passport to an intersex person. And they said in early 2022, which to me means first quarter, I don't know what it means to them, they will start issuing non-binary passports to anyone who wants it. So right now, I believe it's 24 states in the US would issue either a non-binary birth certificate, driver's license, or both. Sometime this year, it should be possible for any person who needs it be able to get a non-binary passport. So that means companies, hopefully in every state, are going to have employees, like when you first come in and you're doing your initial employee paperwork where you have to show, your documents to prove that who you are. Instead of bringing in, I think it's like your social security card and your driver's license, you can just use your passport. So every company potentially is going to have new employees coming in or employees updating their records with a passport to be like, I'm non-binary. And so this is an issue that everyone's going to have to deal with across the board. So I hope that companies are taking notice and planning accordingly. I want to see companies doing things like, if you have a single user bathroom, don't assign it a gender. Just say, this is a bathroom, you may use it. Or if somebody is going into a bathroom and you're wondering if they should be going in there, yeah, they know where they're supposed to be. That whole issue of oh, men are going to be going into women's bathroom claiming that they're trans women. It's like, no, that's never happened. Predators don't do that. They just go into the bathroom and attack people. That's not a transgender non-binary thing. And for me, I picked the bathroom based on which one had the shortest line and where am I less likely to be killed, because the death rate, especially for trans women of color, is crazy. So, first things first, don't die. So I hope that more and more companies are going to be like, oh shit, we have to deal with this. And dress code, I think there should be, if there is a dress code, there should be one dress code, not men, women, boys, girls, whether we're talking about, school versus, job, and be like, you know what, we have a pants option, we have a skirt option, wear whatever you want to wear as long as you abide by the rules. And there was a great story once where I think guys somewhere maybe Sweden or Germany or something started wearing skirts to drive buses because the dress code said that skirts were okay, but shorts were not. So the guys were like, screw this, we're wearing skirts. And they looked great, by the way. All right. Look at some of your other questions. It does seem there's some trendiness in gender and sexuality. Here's a topic that has come up in women's colleges. Do you think some females just don't want to say they're lesbian. In the past, they may have said they're a lesbian rather than a trans man. I think everybody kind of has their own journey. I know of at least one YouTuber who I follow who initially, he said he was assigned female at birth, said he was a lesbian, and then it's like, oh no, I'm really a trans man. And so the process of figuring out who you are can be a process. I know for some men, cisgender men, they have first come out as bisexual and then gay. And it's, some people would just assume that, oh, bisexuality is just like a road, is just like a stop on the way to gay town. It's like, no, not for everybody. There are some truly cisgender bisexual men. They don't have to be, they're not gay and hiding it. So yeah, does that happen? Yeah. So, can I speak, do I think it's trendy? No. I think the number of people who claim a gender that they know they're not is probably rare. I mean, it's one thing to, I don't know, claim you like something that you don't to fit in at school. I've never heard of anybody faking a gender. I know that there's, it's okay for people to be confused and to say, I think I might be, and it's like, okay, go with that. And, if you want to embrace that side of you for, more for a while, whether it's your clothes, you want to use a different name. Okay. But I think that's part of the self-discovery process. So yeah, I don't think it's trendy as much as people are. It takes time for some people to figure out who they are. So, all right. What could a company put on its website to indicate that it recognizes and validates LGBTQ identities? I think in terms of what images you put out there, if they're, if you want, a lot of companies like in June turn their logo rainbow for Pride Month. That's a start. But I think taking a stand on issues, and if your company has insurance that will cover things like gender affirmation surgery or hormone blockers for kids, make that something that you include when you're talking about your benefits. Or, now that we have gay marriage, we don't have to recognize domestic partners anymore, but back before, in the before time, that would have been something to put out there. Hire LGBT people, include that if you are trying to embrace more diversity or promote diversity or solicit diversity in terms of who's applying. Include, don't just think of racial minorities, or if you're a male dominated, industry, women, think also about LGBT and look at, what is your company doing from a cultural perspective to make people feel welcome? Does it feel like, cisgender white boys club? Well, a minority of any type may not feel comfortable being there, and so you may want to look at your culture, and would people of certain minorities feel welcome in that environment? If you have, I know some companies, usually bigger companies, have an LGBT group, and they participate in Pride, or they have events and speakers. I've already been invited to be a speaker for one company during Pride Month. So things like that. All right. How should we think about being more inclusive in our marketing? What's one thing marketers should absolutely not do? That's a hard one, because I don't see companies screwing it up too badly. Being we're going to try to be inclusive, and they totally fall on their face. I mean, don't use slurs. Don't put, I don't know, don't put naked people. I guess, but beyond that, you're we want to be, more inclusive. Okay, then think about, what are we doing now, and what would make us look more inclusive, and just kind of broaden that horizon. It's not rocket science. I think it might be challenging to find maybe stock images. So you may have to expand that. I remember hearing about like one like stock image company was like they went out of their way to make sure they had disabilities featured, whether that was, including things like amputees and wheelchairs and things along those lines. Yes, I think it might be difficult to show like a mental disability, but you may have to look at other sources to show the types of people you would want to put on your marketing materials. Check my notes to see. Oh, marketers. Here's an easy one for you. Instead of saying he or she, he/she, just use they. They, them, their. They, singular they, was the Merriam-Webster word of the year in 2019. So it's a word. I promise you it's a word. I know copywriters are notorious for wanting to change they, singular they, to he or she, or something like that. So that is something you could just put in like your style Bible of this is how we write this. This is what we use. I even had a situation where somebody wrote about me in their book using the appropriate pronouns and their editor changed it. And my friend didn't catch it and until after it went to print, and he had to message me and be like, I'm so sorry. Like, I know what your pronouns are. They put she in the print book. It'll be fixed in the ebook. Because I can tell you, I was actually reading my friend's book. It's a business marketing book. It's on probably many of your shelves. And as I was reading it, I was just saying he or she, he or she. And when I see that, or if I'm at an event and someone addresses the audience of welcome, ladies and gentlemen, I go, oh, they don't see me. They don't acknowledge me. I'm not part of their group. I'm off the island. And it makes me feel, I mean, you could just see like when I was like, oh, like it makes me feel deflated, sad, left out, angry. It kind of, I put it in the same, like similar to like maybe the feeling of it's like dogs are welcome except pit bulls. It's like, we love all people, not you. And it's just that inherent feeling of like exclusion. And I was like, and that's what it feels like. I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for all non-binary people. But when I see that blatant, unintentional exclusion, it's like, oh, they don't know I exist. And that's actually something I encounter on a day-to-day basis. I did a challenge last year where I kept track for 30 days. How many times was I properly gendered, addressed, and how many times was I misgendered? And I kept two little prescription bottles going because, I'm old enough to have those. And every time it happened, I would put a penny in each jar. And so at the end of the month, I could see, side by side what it looked like. I was misgendered on average 3 times a day. I was correctly addressed 23 times in 30 days. So it's like a 3-to-1 difference where most of the time they're gonna say it wrong. And so by being somebody who does it right, and if you're using they instead of he or she in your marketing, most cis people aren't going to realize it, but your non-binary audience will, and the people who care about that will. And it's just that little thing of like, oh, like they see me, I'm in the club. And most other people won't even notice that. All right. Oh, here's one you should know. How do you recover from a verbal stumble? You say the wrong thing. It's really easy. You just apologize and move on. I had a client do it not too long ago. They were like, she, oh, sorry, they, and just kept on with their sentence. That's all. Not a big deal. So don't feel like it's a big deal. I put it in the same category as you mispronounce somebody's name. It's like Andrea. Oh, sorry, Andrea. That's it. I recommend that you practice if you have a non-binary person in your life and you want to make sure that you use the correct pronouns. practice talking to them, annoy your spouse, your kids, your pet, to be like, oh, River is coming in tomorrow. They are really into paddle boarding. I'm really excited to hear about their upcoming project or, marketing launch, and just practice using their name in conjunction with those pronouns. And so you just build those, the neurological net in your mind. So it's okay to talk about your non-binary friends or your non-binary contacts to practice. That's not gossip in my world. What else can I answer for you all? We have about 8 minutes left. I want to make sure I'm providing value to you.
So Ruth, to follow up on the if you make a mistake, what happens if you realize it like the next day? How do you approach the person? Do you
you just shoot, if it's someone in a workplace, you just go, I realized what I did. I'm so sorry. Or if it's an email, it'd be like, my bad. Like, I made a mistake. So yeah, no big deal. Again, put it in the same category of what if I mispronounced their name? Oh, this is an important one. If you are ever making a referral to somebody or like an introduction and the person's pronouns are either they, them, or not obvious, and that's an issue they deal with people misgendering them, say, I want to introduce you to Ruth Carter, parentheses, they, them. Because I had this once where a friend of mine gave her, recommended me to their friend or to one of their contacts and use the correct pronouns. Oh, you should call Ruth. They're a great lawyer. They can probably answer your question. The guy called me up. She, her, girl, woman. I was just like, ugh. And I went to my friend. I was like, did you use the wrong pronouns? He's like, no. But it's because I have vintage old lady name. And I have this lovely soprano voice. They assume it's they, them. If they didn't Google me up and see all the other places that say they, them. So that's one thing you can do to support your non-binary people.
Ruth, I think
if someone in the organization is well-meaning, but ultimately not super knowledgeable about these topics, like where do you recommend pointing someone to learn if they're well-meaning but they have a lot to learn?
Gosh, I mean, you can always send them my way. When I was getting my mammogram, insurance will only categorize you as male or female. So I cannot update my insurance correctly. And I can't buy insurance as a non-binary person. I have to declare a gender that's not correct. If I could, I would not have insurance as a protest to be like, I can't buy insurance because you don't acknowledge non-binary people. And when I was doing my mammogram, yay, boob vice, my place where I went like defaulted she, her, and I was like emailing them and I couldn't book online because like I had to say I was female, and I'm like, I'm not female. Yeah. Because the protocol is different. And I emailed them and they're like, would you like talk to our people about this? And I was like, yes, I would happily do that. I don't know if there are a lot of places online, but I probably look to I think it's transequality.org is probably a good place to look. If they wanted more like down to earth information, like more personal stories, I would say Jammy Dodger, Jammi Dodger, like the baseball team. He's a trans man out of the UK who talks about all things transgender, non-binary, asexual. And he puts out like 2 videos a week, and it's just a good place for quality information that's accessible and like story based. And he does like memes and stuff like that. So that may be a place for people to look. But yeah, I would say jump on the Google machine and be like, how to do this right.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
And Ruth, I think it was earlier this year, LinkedIn added the field of pronoun to their profile, which I thought was great. What else could a service like LinkedIn be doing to be more inclusive?
I think that's probably the best thing that LinkedIn could have done. For me on LinkedIn, I did update my pronouns, but then I also changed my LinkedIn name to Ruth Carter, parentheses, they, them. So that way it's guaranteed if you look me up, it's going to be there. So I think part of it is on the person to say, I'm different. So, I mean, again, I know I have a soprano voice. I currently have boobs on my chest and I have an old lady name. So I know that 99% of people are going to, who don't know me are going to assume I'm female. So it's on me to say, to let you know, yeah, I'm not. Just because we live in a culture that is based on the gender binary for now. So, and I may put this out there because I know we have 3 minutes left. I'm going to put my email in the chat. Anybody can reach out to me anytime. I am always open to, help however I can, because this is an area that we're still figuring out. And so, things may change over, weeks, months, years. You may have a kid who, you find out is non-binary and you're like, I don't know what to do. Any of that, feel free to reach out.
And also, Ruth, real quick, tell us what you do for a living and like what services you provide.
Oh yeah, I do have a job, don't I? I forget about those things. I am a licensed attorney in Arizona with a practice that focuses on business, intellectual property, and internet law.
Excellent.
Yep. And let me see if I can get her to come over. Lucy, come here. Come here. I hear her jingle. Come on, come here.
So I met Lucy and Ruth at a conference last year in Cleveland. So let's see. Lucy probably doesn't remember me.
Oh, that is my basset hound.
Oh, so cute. So cute.
And I wrote her into my contract. So she can come every day with me. Oh.
All right, well, Ruth, you're getting a lot of thanks in the chat, and I would like to thank you as well. I think, speaking for myself, I have a lot to learn, and I think I learned a lot today. So thanks for joining us, and everyone have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Will the recording be available later?
Yes, I'll post the recording.